Wisdome In Greed by MammonProtectsquad, also known as Mother Fluffer, on Archive of Our Own. Summary. When a precious item seemingly goes missing, Mammon is blamed and thrown out of the House of Lamentation. But when they find it the following morning, and they still expect to find Mammon waiting outside like a lost puppy, only to find he isn't there. The search lasts years, with no sign of the Avatar of Greed, until the day of the arrival of the Realm exchange students. Chapter 1. A Greedy Choice. Mammon looked at the door of the House of Lamentation where he lived with his brothers. He tried to tear his mind away from the idea that they would soon open the door and let him in. Even as the skies opened and it began to rain, he couldn't look away from the door until the final light shut off, drowning the house in darkness. "What are you doing, Mammon?" he muttered to himself, turning and looking around. Is this worth it? Was it worth it? He had no idea anymore. He thought following Lucifer to fight for Lilith was a good plan, that in the end that they would be happier away from the celestial realm. That they lost Lilith, became sins, and he was failing to deal with his. His greed was out of control. He knew that. He knew his brothers had every right to hate him. He was scummy. He was an idiot. And yes, he was the shame of the family. And he just took it. They had been through enough. If being the target of their hate saved them from turning on each other, he was willing to be that punching bag. But for how much longer could he do this? How long till he decides he should join Lilith completely? Mammon let out a stuttering breath and shook his head. He had enough. This was enough. He hadn't even touched that damn vase. He had no idea what vase they were even talking about. The house had like 100. He couldn't tell one from the other. He wanted to cry that his brothers believed in his sin more than him. But hasn't that always been? Mammon thought to himself. He used to be Lucifer's throne. He used to be hard-working and respected, even if he liked to skip work now and again. If they thought him in the celestial realm, and it only got worse in the devildom, why should he stick around? Mammon looked at the house again. Seeing no movement behind the windows, he nodded to himself and left the gardens, closing the gate behind him. Enough is enough. Don't miss me too much, Mammon whispered, and used his power to take him away from the devildom. No one had seen him leave, and no one would ever believe he finally left them behind. Beelzebub opened the front door the following morning, half expecting to find Mammon there, but was surprised to find the garden empty, nothing to indicate he had even spent the night outside. "Bill, have you got Mammon?" Asmo called, looking out of the dining room. "He's not here," Belle replied. Lucifer came up behind him and looked outside with a frown. He pulled out his phone from his pocket and called Mammon's DDD. The six brothers jumped a little as they heard the ringtone close. They hurried out to check, but only found the DDD placed on a table in the gardens, under an umbrella. Bill picked it up and looked at Lucifer in panic. "Start searching around the devildom. I'm going to speak to Diablo," Lucifer said, shifting into his demonic form and flying off towards the palace. The others split up into groups and began the search. There was no sign of Mammon anywhere. No hotels had seen him, no casinos, none of the witches who were visiting. Even with the prince working on their side, Mammon was simply nowhere to be found. But the six avatars refused to give up. They continued the search for the second. As months turned into years, and that became centuries, not once did they give up the search for their brother. Mammon sat in an office, surrounded by books. Centuries had flown by, and times had truly changed for the greed demon as he sat straight as he was working by the light of a magic candle. "You know, they are still looking for you, right?" 13, the Reaper, sat on the edge of a table, watching the one demon she had seriously considered a good friend, and the only being she would blow out a candle early for. Mammon signed, but didn't look up from writing. He had grown his hair out to shoulder length, and it had been held back by a golden-coloured ribbon, a gift from a young angel student. A pair of amber glasses sat at the bridge of his nose as he worked. His ocean blue eyes carefully read over the work before him, but he didn't seem too worried about the news. "I imagine they are. Having a brother going missing must be awful for Lucifer's pride, And goodness knows I have probably ruined Lord Diavolo's image in some way, Mammon sighed, but he smiled. But tell me, 13, do you think I could have improved like this if I had stayed? The Reaper frowned. She had watched her friend change a lot over the years. She saw and bore witness to much of his growth, from insecure and anxious to confident and snarky. But it was obvious that growth had come from his own hands, from his efforts. She smiled and shook her head. You wouldn't have. They would have held you back, she admitted, and they'll never know that. They will never understand your efforts. Never say never, 13. Mammon looked up with a smile. I went up against the odds. We have humans, witches, and demons studying in one place. Sure, the Devildom likely knows nothing about it. They all know how the Avatar of Sloth feels about the human race. No one is brave enough to make that final link. But look at this place. Peace between all three races. It's just an honor I could be part of it. Mammon looked towards the window. 13 sighed and moved to the window, leaning against them. She was a little surprised when Mammon joined her. You also forgave me, 13 sighed. I was a big asshole to you. I know I wasn't the only one, but sometimes people don't deserve your kindness. Your brothers don't, for sure. She watched him from the corner of her eyes. The demon didn't look away from watching the scene outside, a small smile on his face as he held his hands behind his back, as he pondered her words before replying. Maybe, but you weren't the only one who was an asshole, 13. I had issues, I was troubled. My sin was far out of control, and I had no way of knowing how to manage it. Not even my brothers could handle theirs, but expected me to master mine. I was horrible. I made many mistakes and fatal flaws that still haunt me. But there is a difference between me and this. We have both moved forward. We have grown, mentally and emotionally. I doubt many demons would recognize me now. Mammon smiled. You didn't the first time, and you helped me against Maddie and the other witches when I could finally face them. Well, you did kind of lose the cool bad boy vibe and swap it for dignified upper-class gentleman with your fancy suit and waistcoat, and don't even try hiding that pocket watch. You're like the complete opposite of what you were. If a demon does recognize you on sight, I will grant you 3 wishes, 13 said, causing Mammon to laugh heartily. I suppose it was quite a stale change for someone like myself, Mammon nodded, straightening his tie. But I like having to look the part of Professor. It makes me happy. I never asked. Why do you go by Professor Grimm and not just Professor Mammon? 13 asked curiously. Well, for 1, the currency in the Devildom. 2, the last names of authors who wrote some truly harrowing fairy tales and how my life started like a grim fairy tale. But now it's priceless. Mammon smiled. 13 raised her brow at him. You've been reading too much, she stated, causing him to laugh. I have, but my greed desires it, and there's a lot left to learn. Even more to teach, Mammon smiled. A new year begins in a few weeks. New students, new faces, and a lot of children who need to learn the basics. Mammon watched him, before rolling her eyes softly. Well, time to get busy then, assuming you have some form of a lesson plan I can follow. She held out her hand, and Mammon beamed at her and went to receive the files. Mammon's 13 followed him. She wouldn't tell him of the massive reward the brothers placed on any information surrounding him. It's not like she needed the money, not when greed favoured her as a close friend.